I know a lot of y'all got the question, so I hope I can give a good answer. But a lot of my brothers want to know, why do we have to suffer on this walk with God? Well, stay tuned because we're about to get into it right now. Okay, so in order to build bolder men, bolder believers in God, we gotta have these conversations. We gotta get vulnerable. We gotta ask the right questions and share this knowledge with one another. So it seems like a lot of people thought that once you get closer to God and closer to Jesus and start reading it, everything was just gonna be easy because, you know, He is the way, the truth, the life, and you thought that just life would just be a whole lot better. But, you know, we come to find out that that's not the case. It even seems like more so we struggle than before. So like, why even go on this walk in the first place if we're just gonna struggle even more? There's even specific struggles that only Christians go through. So now we feel like even more of a target than before. Some different struggles I know for sure that I've been through and other people that I know have been through as Christians are social, physical, mental, and financial. And all of those can have an emotional component as well, obviously. But those are like the main four. The biggest one for me was social, and I know some of y'all probably have been dealing with the same thing. Now, especially if you're new on this walk, you're gonna have this social isolation. You're gonna start thinking different than everyone else around you. And now people are gonna treat you different instead of you treating other people different. You have this new knowledge now, and you just want to share it to everybody because you realize all the old ways that you had and everyone else around you had was wrong, and you just want to share. But the weird thing is, nobody's really trying to hear it. So as Christians, we have this social isolation where we end up being by ourselves or in a smaller group of people a lot of times. And honestly, we come to find that that's sometimes better. And then it could be physical. Surprisingly, yes, it can be physical. Because I know if people are praying and fasting is not easy. Fasting can get physically challenging very quickly because you have to be around people and act as if you're not fasting in order to get the proper reward. And you have to go through your entire day just hungry and hurting and in pain until that time is up for you to be done fasting. And then the mental. There's a lot of studying and reading and especially changing your mindset to get out of old ways. So it's an internal struggle that's mental within yourself that sometimes we don't feel like we can always talk about. But that's why we're here now. And then that's financial. Because as Christians, we give whenever God tells us to give. We give 10% of everything that we get in church and into the community and into other ministries. And even if we don't feel like we have the money, if we get convicted to give by God, then we have to give open-heartedly. We have to give. And then we have to look at God as the provider and wait and hope and have faith in the fact that He will give us our daily bread and give us everything that we need when we need it and how we need it. And one point to consider that's not about this video is that every other creature is provided for. Every other creature gets their daily bread and is not without what they need. So the Bible says, how much more will He give unto us? Right? And no, we can't have this conversation without pulling out the Bible, so let's get to it. Let's look at Colossians chapter 1 and a little bit of chapter 2. Now I got mine right here. Y'all can read along with me. For it pleased the Father that in Him all the fullness should dwell, and by Him to reconcile all things to Himself by Him, whether things on earth or things in heaven, having made peace through the blood of His cross. And you, once you were alienated and enemies in your mind by wicked works, yet now He is reconciled in the body of His flesh through death to present you holy and blameless and above reproach in His sight. If indeed you continue in the faith, grounded and steadfast, you are not moved away from the hope of the gospel which you heard, which was preached to every creature under heaven, of which I, Paul, I'm not Paul, but Paul, the author, of which I, Paul, became a minister. Verse 24, now I rejoice in my sufferings for you and fill up in my flesh what was lacking in the afflictions of Christ, for the sake of His body, which is the church, of which I became a minister according to the stewardship from God, which was given to me for you, to fulfill the word of God, the mystery which has been hidden from ages and from generations, but now has been revealed to the saints. To them God willed to make known what are the riches of the glory of this mystery among the Gentiles, which is Christ in you, the hope of glory. Him we preach, warning every man and teaching every man in all wisdom, that we may present every man perfect in Jesus Christ. Now let's go down to chapter 2, skip verse 1. Let's go to verse 2. that their hearts may be encouraged, being knit together in love, and attaining to all riches of the full assurance of understanding, to the knowledge of the mystery of God, both of the Father and of Christ, in whom are hidden all the treasures of wisdom and knowledge. Now, if y'all need to read that again, pause it, go read it, come back to the video, I'll be here. Now, if we look at this verse, there's a few key things to look at and to consider and to look deeper into in order to understand how we go through this suffering and why we go through this suffering and what the passage is trying to say. In the first verse that we read, chapter 119, the first verse, a key word is reconcile. He says reconcile all things back to himself. And then later in the passage it says to be made perfect when we present ourselves to Christ. I paraphrase that, but you know what I'm saying. Okay, so I want all of y'all to understand that with purpose comes pain, right? With purpose comes all of the suffering that we are questioning right now, right? And the passage says to be reconciled back to him and to be made perfect. Part of that is the purpose. But the process of that purpose, you're going to have a little pain in order to get to what the purpose is. So without pain comes purpose. But the good news is, let's just say it backwards. The good news is, with all of this pain comes purpose as well. So through this pain, you're gonna have a reward at the end of all of it. But let's look into it. So I wanna change your mindset a little bit. If there is no pain, then you should question if you're in align with your purpose. Now, don't question if you have purpose, because we all do, but question if you're aligned with your purpose. If there's no pain or suffering happening in your life right now. If you don't feel pain, you should start to question if you're doing the necessary steps to be in line with your purpose, or if you're in the proper position to receive answers and instructions that goes towards your purpose. Because anything worth having is gonna cause some discomfort. It's gonna require some discomfort, especially if it's bringing out a new version of you. Everything that is required, everything that you want at the end of your purpose is gonna require you to let go of everything that does not serve the destination in which you're going to. And there's no way that can be comfortable, because you're holding on to weight, you're holding on to ideas, you're holding on to old ways, you're holding on to certain people, you're holding on to certain habits that you've known most of your life, or you've known up until this point. So think about how hard that would be to get rid of everything. It's gonna take some work. So now that we're in the right headspace, right mind space to look at this, let's get back to the text. So in verse 19 it says to be reconciled, and to be reconciled back to him. And I always assume that reconciled means to bring back. But if in the text it says to reconcile back, then it can't mean to bring back, because then it'll be like bring back. So like what does reconcile actually mean? So if we look at the definition of it, in the concordance and in the Webster's definition, let's look at all of that, right? So to reconcile means to be reconciled back. Okay, we know that part. But it also means to be reconciled completely. So it's not part of the way, it means all of the way. It doesn't mean that it's midway between the process. It doesn't mean that you have a foot in the door. It means that you're completely there, completely committed, completely back. It also means to bring back to a former state of harmony. So not only bring back, because we can bring back things in many ways, but it means to bring back in harmony and working together and being efficient and going towards a purpose. It also means to draw back to himself. But it says it in the text, so we know that definition, right? So for me, that didn't give me a better understanding of what it was trying to say, so I had to look at the definition even further. I had to look at it as much as I could, because the definition kept saying reconcile, because it's coming from a Greek word, so to translate it is gonna have the word reconcile in it, because the word we're defining isn't reconcile, it's the Greek version of reconcile. Anyways, the next definition means to restore relations between. So similar to bring back to harmony, restore the relationship that we had with God. Also to coexist in harmony. But the best definition I like is to make consistent with one another. To make consistent with one another. To make the same. So as Christians, we know that the goal is to be like Christ, right? But we don't really look at that. We don't really work towards that. At least most people that I see don't work towards that. But the definition of this word means to make consistent. So that means everything that is like Christ is what we should be like. Not just be like Christ, but like everything that is him should be us. Should be the goal that we try to get to. And I think some people look at to be like Christ as, oh, I'm gonna be like Christ, but not try to be exactly like Christ. But if we look at this definition, God is trying to reconcile us back to him, and reconcile means to make consistent, right? So that's equal. That is not okay. That word consistent means the same. It means equal. It means all the boxes checked on one side or all the boxes checked on the other side. Now, no, we're not God, we're not Jesus, but the attributes that he has, the way that he lived, the way that he treated other people, the way he reacted to other people, how he answered questions, the way he taught, the way he loved, the way he cared, the way he had compassion, should be how we are when we look at the list of our attributes and characteristics. Okay, so we know what the word reconcile means. So what does that mean for our struggle? Just because we have to be brought back to Christ and be made consistent with him and be like him in every single way, what does that mean for our struggle? Okay, so just think about this. In order to play a sport at a certain level, you have to work on the necessary skills to make you worthy of playing and being at that level. And what does that mean? That means you have to get uncomfortable in the gym. You have to work on all of your weaknesses. You have to get under the squat rack. You have to bench press. You have to work on your explosion and your agility and your speed. You have to work on your flexibility. You have to work on your wind endurance. If it's basketball, you have to work on your jump shot. You have to work on your dribble. You have to work on your crossover. You have to work on your passing, your offense and your defense. You have to work on your vertical. But you have to show up time and time again in order to work on these skills that you are weak at. Everything that you were once before will not work for the place that you're going to if you want to play at a certain level. And the higher the level that you want to play at, the more work you have to do, and on a more consistent basis, if you want to stay good and stay getting paid. This is also you can turn into that player that you need to be to play at that level. And you have to get rid of every attribute that would have caused you to fail when you got to that level. So let's say you're on a team, let's say you're at that level, right? Now, knowing that the process is painful and frustrating, why do these athletes that are at the high level keep continuing to show up every single day when they know it's only going to cause more pain? Well, that's because they love the game so much. That's one. We're going to get into that later. But the purpose is to win the game. The purpose is a good enough player to where you don't cost your team the game. Because every player has their role. And you got to do your role to the best of your abilities. If not, then everyone on your team is also going to suffer because you did not step up to the plate how you needed to. But the goal is to win the game. And to win every game in the season. And to win every playoff game. And to win the championship. To get to the end of the road. The purpose is to get to the very end, the championship. Now, if you were somebody like me, I used to play sports, but I'm not playing sports right now. So when I go to the gym, my purpose is to just look and feel my best, but it's not other people relying on me, right? It's not a game I have to win. It's not a championship I have to win. The stakes for me are much lower than for a player at this professional level, because I'm just trying to maintain and look my best. But it's not to perform at a certain level. It's just to feel good, to look good. And I can do that with little to no effort, right? And it's like I could work as hard as a professional athlete, but why don't I? I could work as hard as a professional athlete every time I go to the gym. I could look up their workouts. I could look up their meal plan. I could look up their sleep schedule. I could look up how often they train. But why don't I? That's because what we are faced with and what we endure is determined by our purpose. I'll say it again. What we are faced with and what we endure is determined by our purpose. So it's like, why do these athletes keep showing up every day? So it's also because they have a perspective of what their purpose is. They understand what the purpose is. Therefore, they keep showing up to the workouts. They keep enduring through the workouts. Regardless of the pain, they keep showing up because they understand that there is a greater purpose at the end of all of this. My suffering is not in vain. With my pain comes purpose. And with the purpose that I have in mind, that I know is there, that I know is possible, it's gonna be some pain involved with that. But I care more about the purpose than I do the pain. All right, let's bring it back. Let's bring it back. So I don't know who's all an athlete, but I'm assuming if you're watching this, then you're a Christian, or you're questioning if you should be Christian, or you're dealing with some type of struggle regardless. And for most of us, if we are Christian, that means we once weren't Christian. That means there's things from the world that we got to get rid of in order to be Christian and more like Christ, right? So let's think about the athlete, with them keeping their purpose in mind for the championship, right? If we're to be examples of Christ for the world, after just being in the world, how hard do you think that process is about to be? How hard do you think that process is about to be? After having everything from the culture ingrained in us, and now all of a sudden our heart is changed, or at least going in a direction of change, do you think that that's going to be an easy thing? Nah, it's not. And I'm sure you know that if you're here. But we're meant to be examples of Christ. And we all know that Christ had his fair share of suffering, more than any of us could have imagined. So if Christ suffered, then we will also suffer. Just like we say if Christ was judged, he was judged first, therefore we're going to be judged. He suffered, so we're going to suffer. Because in verse 20 it says he made peace through his blood on the cross. And we all know what the cross is. It's what he actually hung on and died on. That was the last place he was before his burial, was on the cross. And we looked at the definition of reconcile. So, like, what is the definition of the cross? Because it's good to look at certain words. And the cross has a literal and a figurative definition. And the literal definition of the cross is the wood that he died on. That is the cross, the literal definition. But the figurative, you can probably assume what it means if you really thought about it. But it means exposure to death and self-denial. Exposure to death and self-denial is the meaning of the cross. So the more we listen to God's voice, and the more we expose ourselves to the things of God and kill our flesh and deny ourselves, that will bring us closer to God. So how was Jesus able to be on the cross and be exposed to death and deny himself completely unto death? That was because of his love, and that was because of his perspective of the purpose. And the purpose was to make peace within the whole world and to bring us back to him and to be the ultimate sacrifice for us. That was his perspective. That was in his heart. We were in his heart. We were in his mind as he did this. So he had the perspective of the purpose while going through the pain. The pain was nothing compared to the purpose. And that brings us to the last point, because it's how do we have hope through all of this suffering? Yeah, we can have the perspective of the suffering, but it's gonna suck. And it's like, do I really want to do that? It's like, but what is the hope that we should have? Or better yet, what is the best way to have this perspective in order to get through the pain, to get to the purpose? And that's at the beginning of chapter 2, where it says to be knitted in love. And I'm sure you can ask your mother, and she'll probably be the best person to answer this question. Because the question would be, what does love do to your suffering? What does love do to your pain? And honestly, when you actually love something, when you actually have a relationship with something, you would sacrifice your time, you would sacrifice your comfort, you would sacrifice your finances in order to see that thing come forth. The more you love something, the more you're willing to submit to the suffering, to see it come to pass. And it says to be knitted in love. And knitted, it means to be joined together. It means to be with other people, with like believers that can be there to encourage you, that can be there to speak life into you, to teach you new things, to change your mindset and think about stuff you haven't thought before when it comes to the thing that you're going towards. Because if you are in this moment of social isolation, as we mentioned before, it feels so good to finally find friends that can give you the word of God or can pray for you and encourage you to help you get through a season in your life. So I encourage you to find somebody. And if you need somebody, go down in the comments and introduce yourself, and we can start to build that community of people to go on this walk with God with. But the more you love something, the more you submit to the suffering. As we said, a mother giving birth to her child. She's carried that child for 9 months. So of course she loves it. Of course she has a relationship with it. Of course she's going to do whatever she can to see that life in her hands. A mother or father providing for their family once the child is born. those parents are going to take that extra job, work those extra hours to make sure that those kids are provided for, if they really love them. For the people that's in school right now, you understand that there's something to get to. You understand that there's a job to get to, a career to get to. And I'm sure you're passionate about it. So every class that you're taking, every extra hour you put in the library to study, you love the thing that you're going towards. So you're going to do these extra steps. You're going to go the extra mile in order to receive the blessings on the other side. Like the athlete that goes to every workout in order to win the game. He goes to every workout in order to make himself better so that he doesn't make his team suffer, because he knows there's a purpose at the end to win the game. Or how preachers show up every single Sunday. I don't think we think about this. So preachers show up every single Sunday, regardless of everything else they have going on. They show up every single Sunday, and I think we take that for granted a lot of the time. So if you are a pastor, if you are someone that preaches, if you are someone that works in the church and you show up every single Sunday, rain, sleet, or snow, injured, tired, whatever, I applaud you, and I'm praying for you, and I'm proud of you for doing that. So keep doing it, because it's not going unnoticed. But we do these things because we love it. We submit to the suffering because we love it. So yeah, with pain comes purpose. With purpose comes pain. And the more you love something, the more you're able to submit to the suffering in order to get to the purpose. And God sent his son because of love. And that same love allowed him to endure the suffering and the pain on the cross. He saw the full purpose of the pain, which is why he was able to endure it. So I hope that all helps. And if it did help, share it with 5 people. If it helped you, share it with 5 people. And do me a favor. If you need further encouragement, put a comment down below. And if you don't need encouragement, please go in the comments to encourage someone else. But that's all I got. So I'll see you on the next episode. But remember, I love you. God loves you.